Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from around the world. And the first thing that we would love to see is everybody pop into the chat function who you are and what part of the world you're dialing in from today, because we have over 600 people registered for part 2 of the PPWR discussion, and we would love to find out what country you're dialing in from. So pop that into the chat function. We'd love to know. And while we're doing that, we might just get started because we have quite a lot to get through today. My name is Nerida Kelton, and I am the Vice President for Sustainability and Safe Food for the World Packaging Organization. And it is a really exciting opportunity to come back again for part 2 of the PPWR discussion. The first thing that I would like to do is just very briefly talk to you about who the WPO are. And the WPO have 63 members around the world. And as you can see on the map, we are spread all the way across the globe. We represent varying packaging organizations and associations, and we are all slightly different in what we do, but at the end of the day, we're here to provide training and education and support for the packaging industry. The second thing that I wanted to show you is just a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. And so when we're talking about sustainability, sustainability is so much broader than just global packaging waste design and regulations. And as you can see, there are so many different parts and so many moving pieces of the puzzle. But tonight, what we're going to talk about is packaging waste regulations. But the first thing is to understand the circular economy and what a circular economy for packaging looks like. And at the end of the day, the World Packaging Organization's members are trying to help support and create a circular economy for packaging. But collectively and globally, we need to design out waste at the start. We need to ensure that we have harmonized and consistent packaging design standards. We need to ensure that all packaging is recycle ready for the country and countries that it's sold in. We must eliminate chemicals of concern. We must reduce virgin materials as much as possible, eliminate all single-use plastic and problematic materials where possible, and try to develop more reuse and refillable solutions. And ultimately, for the WPO, we have one objective, and that's to keep all packaging out of landfill, the waterways and the environment, and to ensure that we stay within our planetary boundaries. With each European generating almost 190 kilograms of packaging waste every year, April 2024 became a really important date in time, with the European Parliament approving the updated packaging and packaging waste regulation, or as we call it, the PPWR. The final PPWR has been designed to bring together all EU member states to create a harmonized ecosystem for packaging, from circular design principles at the start through to measuring the full life cycle of all packaging that's placed on market and how the packaging can be recycled and reprocessed at the end of life. Moving forward through the PPWR, design considerations for packaging will be regulated across all EU member states. And just some of the PPWR regulations include reduction of materials within the design process, elimination of unnecessary materials, chemicals of concern, incorporating more recycled content into packs, and redesign to improve reuse models. If we move into the collection, sortation, recycling, and reprocessing part of the value chain, we need to look at the enhancement of consumer buy-in for recycling. We also need to focus on harmonized and consistent on and off-pack labeling. The establishment of container deposit schemes is coming for all EU states, and a roadmap on how all this will be achieved will be discussed tonight. The world is watching Europe. The PPWR will have a global implication, and for many countries like mine, we are working on developing extended producer responsibility and eco-modulation frameworks right now. And we're waiting to see what's happening in Europe and what's happening with the PPWR roadmap. Tonight's part 2 will discuss the roadmap for all EU states, the implications globally, and what's next, the timelines to be set. And with that, I would like to welcome Lina to start the webinar. Over to you, Lina.
Thank you so much for your introduction, Nerida. So my name is Lina, and I will be talking about the final PPWR version and also talk about the latest changes to like the last time to our first webinar. Let me see if I can continue to the next slide. Seems like it doesn't work. Maybe Natalia, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you so much. So since our last webinar on the PPWR in February, the trilogue discussions came to an end, which resulted in a provisional agreement in March of 2024. And this provisional agreement was brought into Parliament and was adopted in the first reading in the end of April of this year. So the PPWR, for all of those who don't know yet, is planned as a regulation, which means in Europe that there has to be no transposition into national law, which means that it enters into force with immediate effect. When looking at the timeline on the right side corner, in 2022, the first proposal was published from the European Commission on the PPWR. Then last year in 2023, the legislative procedure commenced with like the Council and also the Parliament proposing their position. And yeah, this year we look forward to potential adoption, which would mean that the PPWR is expected to enter into force late this year or at the beginning of next year, and which also would mean that the earliest application of all provisions will be in 2026. Let me see if it works now. Sorry, yeah, okay. So the first and one of the main provisions of the PPWR is waste prevention. So apart from reducing excessive packaging and also improving recyclability, as well as increasing the recycled content in plastic packaging and the promotion of reuse, waste prevention is the real central point of the PPWR. So to jump into waste prevention. So member states are required to meet reduction targets, which are set at 5% until 2030, which continues to grow until 15% by 2040. Those targets will be based on per capita and the base year 2018. However, with this new PPWR, which was like approved by the Parliament, the member states can still apply to the Commission that the base year will be changed to another year, which would maybe be better for calculation, etc. When you look at the targets, you might think, yeah, okay, 5% until 2030 is not that much. But if you look at the waste, which is still growing, it would mean an effective reduction by 19% until 2030. And also when you look at 2040, this would mean an effective reduction by almost 40%. So it's not that little, it's really much that has to be reduced. And also, which comes with this new Parliament adopted proposal 7 years after entry into force, it will be reviewed if there's a need to set specific targets for certain packaging materials, for example, for plastics or paper, but we will see in 7 years after the PPWR will be adopted. Next slide. Yeah, we have one back. Maybe it has worked now. Yeah. So another very important provision is recyclable packaging. So all packaging placed on the European market must be recyclable. and there will be a two-stage approach. So first, packaging has to be designed for material recycling, which means that the secondary material has to be of sufficient quality to be used again. And this will be applicable earliest in 2030 or 2 years after the Commission has developed delegated acts, and those acts are planned for 2018. And the second stage in this two-stage approach would be recycled at scale, which means the packaging must be additionally effectively collected, sorted, and recovered to be deemed recyclable. And this will be earliest applicable from 2035 onwards, or there also will be the implementing acts, and when they enter into force 5 years after that, as when 2035 is not an option. There also will be exemptions from this provision. For example, innovative packaging will be exempted for a maximum of 5 years after first being placed in the European market from 2030 onwards. But what is recyclable packaging? So this, the definition and also the calculation of recyclability will be drawn up in delegated acts. However, what we already know is that there are recyclability performance grades. And in comparison to the Commission proposal, the amount of grades was minimized. So there will only be 3 grades, or to be exact 4 grades. And in the original proposal, there were 5 grades. So to start, with the grades A to C, which are now in the PPWR, you have to reach a minimum recyclability of 70% to be deemed recyclable. If you do not reach 70% of recyclability, you are not allowed to place your packaging on the European market from approximately 2030 onwards. The other 2 grades are also important because with like 2038, you only are allowed to place packaging on the market if your packaging reaches recyclability of over 80%. So the best grade would be A, and then from 2030 onwards, only grade B would be allowed, and until that, you have to reach a recyclability over 70% to be able to place your packaging on the European market. Also important is the minimum recycled content in plastic packaging. So from 2030 onwards, you have to, plastic packaging has to contain a minimum recycled content for all plastic components of the packaging, except for the plastic part that accounts for less than 5% of the total weight of the entire packaging unit. How is it calculated? It will be calculated as an average per manufacturing plant and year. As in comparison to the original proposal, where it was calculated per item, it is now calculated as an average per manufacturing plant and year. There are targets set for all kinds of plastic packaging, for contact-sensitive packaging with PET as a main component, but also for contact-sensitive packaging except for PET, as well as for single-use plastic beverage bottles and all other plastic packaging. If you see the targets, they are really set at a really high targets. We have to see that we reach those targets in the future. And this would be it for minimum recycled content in plastic packaging. Then we can continue to reuse, which is also a very central point of the PPWR. So reusable packaging must be conceived, designed, and placed on the market in such a way that it can be reused several times. And there are reuse targets for alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, excluding milk, wine, and spirits, which will be set at 10% for 2030 and at 40% for 2040. What is also really important is that there will be reuse targets for transport and sales packaging, which partly also include e-commerce packaging. So from 2030 onwards, for transport and sales packaging, which is used for transport within the territory of the Union and also intercompany, and also for transportation of linked partner companies and e-commerce, you have to reach at least a 40% reuse rate. So that's also really high in comparison to what is now the status quo of the market. When you just look at transport packaging, sales packaging used for transport within the EU for intercompany and linked partner companies, you have to reach a reusability rate of 100%, and also B2B transport packaging within one member state has to reach a 100% reusability rate. What Nerida already talked about in the introduction, we have to minimize our packaging. We have to see that packaging weight and volume is as low as necessary, that misleading packaging such as double walls and double bottoms is prohibited, and also, reusability, as I already talked about, is really important. It has to be considered with every packaging. What is then especially important for e-commerce, transport, and collective packaging is that the empty space must be reduced to the necessary minimum. And there is a special quota set for this empty space, namely the empty space ratio at 50%. And this is calculated per packaging unit. Yeah, that's really comprehensive. And there are 71 articles in the PPWR, but and it's now over 300 pages, but there are still really many information missing. So there's still missing are 12 delegated acts, 12 implementing acts, 15 reports and assessments, and also further guidelines, legislative proposals, and standards. So although it's really comprehensive as of now, there's still much information that is that has to be drawn up by the Commission. Yeah, and what are the next steps for the PPWR? Currently, the PPWR is going through a linguistic legal examination and is being translated to all 24 official languages of the European Union. This will be ended in June, hopefully, and then in autumn of this year, the Environmental Committee of the Parliament and the new Parliament, as we have a Parliament, as we have the European election next month, the new Parliament must here adopt the final version after the corrigendum procedure. For normal, this is only a formality, but the new Parliament is not bound to further the ideas and the acts of the old Parliament. But we will see about that. And also in autumn, after the text has been finally adopted by the EU Parliament, there also has to be an adoption of the final version by the European Council. After that, it will be published, and this would then mean end of this year or beginning of next year, which would mean an earlier application in 18 months, which would mean in mid-2026. This would be it for now, and I will hand back to Nerida.
Thank you so much, Lina. And firstly, to all of the attendees today, please pop into the chat all your questions. And hopefully in the background, some of the guest speakers will be able to answer some of those before we go into the panel discussion at the end. I have two questions that I would love to ask Lina on another day. And certainly, what does several times mean for reuse is one of my questions. And also, what's the definition of innovative packaging? But we'll certainly circle back to that later if we can. So the next speaker is Manfred Tacker, and I would like to hand over to Manfred for his part of the presentation.
Thank you, Nerida. So the question now is, what does that mean for all manufacturers of packaging or you from abroad importing to Europe? Here, I would say the first thing is we need much more transparency in the future. Perhaps you could, the next slide is here. You need much more transparency here in the future for packaging data. That means you need a lot more KPIs here you have to calculate and to transmit along the whole supply chain. Of course, the first is for packaging minimization, we need the weight of the packaging, and the weight has to be set in context to competing packaging on the market here to look if it is really minimized. That's the part of Charlotte, where she looks here later on benchmarking. Then the recyclability, here the 70% minimum here recyclability of packaging put on the market. How is this to be calculated? This will be my next part here of my talk. Here, design for recycling criteria has to be fulfilled. So the exact composition of the packaging has to be reported and put forward along the whole supply chain. Otherwise, here you won't be able to calculate recyclability of the packaging material. Next point is to look at the environmental impact that has to be minimized as well. A minimum requirement here is the carbon footprint of the packaging you put on the market. And the recycled quality is important as well. At the moment, there is a discussion going on about requirements for recycling technologies, and here what is circularity versus recyclability. Recyclability means that the packaging can be recycled and then can replace virgin material. Circularity means that the quality of recycled is such that it can be used in the same use as the original packaging. Then, of course, recycled content has to be known. And last but not least, emptyability of packaging is very important, because when the consumer cannot fully empty the packaging here, that what stays in the package could have higher carbon footprint and higher environmental impact than the whole package itself. So now going to the question of recyclability assessment, which is not yet clear by the PPWR. Here there is a standards development going on in the European Standards Institute in the SEN. Here you have the structure of the SEN working groups working on that. There are two working groups, that's the main message here, Working Group 3 and Working Group 10. Working Group 10 is working only on plastics recyclability assessment, and this working group has already developed drafts for 14 standards, and these 14 standards should be available in 2025. They are in the last stages here of the development. So for plastics, there will be standards for recyclability assessment in 25. Working Group 3 takes care of all other materials and is developing a material neutral standard here that gives all the necessary context how to develop design for recycling criteria and how to calculate recyclability. And here to give you here a more detailed overview, Working Group 3 is then developing the umbrella standard. That's the general methodology, how to develop design for recycling tables and how to calculate recyclability. That should be applicable for all packaging materials, independent of the type. And then there will be special design for recycling criteria and methods for recyclability assessment for each packaging material. Plastics is here gray because they are quite far advanced. All the other materials have no not started yet with the standardization process. And of course, that's a problem because it should be finished here in 27 so that the Commission can take these standards into account for their delegated act. Standardization process from the start takes 3 years. That means if these processes do not start here this year and this year, beginning next year, there is no chance that there will be a standard available from then. And if this is the case, then of course the Commission is free here to develop their own delegated act. And that would be a problem. How should this process work? First step is that in the standard, there are designed for recycling tables for each packaging material, for each type. And from these standards tables, from this design for recycling tables, in a process not yet clear, there is the calculation of the recyclability in percent. And from this percentage, you get in another step to the performance grade A, B, C. And what the European Commission did here, they said standardization is only responsible for the design for recycling tables, but the actual calculation and recyclability performance grade assessment will be done by the joint research center of the Commission and the Commission. Yeah, so to prevent here too much input from the industry, I would say. So that's the stage we are at the moment for recyclability assessment. So there is now no harmonized recyclability assessment method available on the European level, and we hope we have one in 2027. So what are the rules now when you want here to comply with PPWR in the future? Of course, the first step is always the spec that packaging has to protect the product. That's the first stage. And then the second stage, the packaging, the calculation of the KPIs for packaging includes at a minimum recyclability, packaging weight, carbon footprint, emptyability, and other such as recycled content or renewable content if this is necessary. And the third step is to look at the benchmark to see how the package you put on the market here stands against competitors on the market, so that you gain insight if the package is perhaps too heavy or has too high impact, environmental impact. And the fourth step, if it is necessary, then to optimize packaging and calculate new KPIs. That's so-called the rules to follow. And the conclusions of this talk is here, first of all, you have to calculate a set of KPIs that are chosen according to the PPWR. Here to fulfill the minimization criteria, of course, you have to use benchmarking here. And the recyclability assessment at the moment is not harmonized at the European level. Look out for the plastic DFRs here that will appear in 2025. That will give you indications on that. And transparency is needed. That means here a lot more data will have to flow along the whole supply chain. And I think Alexander will talk about that. Thank you, and back to Nerida.
Thank you, Manfred. And certainly when you were talking about data, we're definitely having that same conversation all the way down here. It's consistent discussions. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. making sure that we have transparency and accessibility to consistent data is so critical to this conversation and the roadmap moving forward. So the next person that I would like to introduce is Charlotte Werner, and she's going to talk about the tough one, the roadmap to compliance. So over to you, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you so much, and also hello from my side. So yeah, I'll like to give you a short way forward how to ensure, let's say, compliance with the packaging and packaging waste regulation, and what is our approach to it. So I hope it's working for me as well to move the slides perfectly. So in the last few years, a lot came on our table with regards to legal requirements in the packaging sector. So most of them you can see in two ways, as a challenge, but also as an opportunity. And what do I mean with that? It's not only the packaging and packaging waste regulation. We will also be requested to report about our sustainability actions with regards to the Cockpit CSRD, and also rethink the way how we claim a sustainable product with the Clean Claims Directive. Then we have the big topic of reducing virgin materials, and also introduce recyclable packaging due to EPR material taxes. And then, as you also can see here on the slide, the big chunk of the packaging and packaging waste regulation, where we think about recycling, recycled content, minimization requirements, as Lina and Manfred already told you. And all of this leads, as I said, to a new set of sustainability KPIs and a new set of parameters, which we need to, on basis of that, we can assess our packaging. And this comes familiar to you, as I have seen it before in Manfred presentation, but it will be necessary to have an overview of the current status quo of your packaging weight, of the recyclability of your packaging. You need to fulfill design for recycling criteria. It must be recyclable up to 70%, soon also up to 80%. Then carbon footprint is always there, and you should reduce it to have a CO2 a balance. So a lot of requirements that are not totally new to our packaging, but will be mandatory in the future. And how we can deal with it, what are the next steps here to fulfill those criteria from the packaging and packaging waste regulation. What we think is the first step is to evaluate the performance of your packaging based on those sustainability indicators, which will be required. And then, if necessary, of course, you might need to change the design of your packaging to be optimized with regards to resource consumption, but also with regards to improving the recyclability of your packaging. And it will not stop with 2030. This is only the start of it. We think you need to continuously monitor those sustainability parameters, because as you have seen, we have targets for 2030, 35, 40. So as said, this is the start of our journey in Europe. So this will become essential to continue monitor this. And as said, the start would be to check and evaluate the performance of your packaging, of your own packaging, but also in comparison to market-related ones. And what we did in Circular Analytics, but also with the support of the University of Applied Science campus in Vienna, we started such a project called Packaging Benchmarking. And the idea behind it is to check the sustainability performance of entire sector of the packaging. We did it for the dairy sector, but also for the cosmetics sector, and checked a wide range of packaging out there based on ecological criteria. And therefore, we use the methodology of holistic sustainability assessment, which is also already a way forward to be compliant with the packaging and packaging waste regulations. We had a lot of producing companies, retailers, and associations on board and performed those projects last year, in which we assessed around over 400 packaging, quite a lot. And our next step will be to go into another sector for convenience packaging. And So I'm rushing a bit because I know we're running out of time. But simply in short, what is the packaging benchmarking? Is said assessing packaging based on ecological criteria. Here on the left side, where we have the circles, this is the model we used. We assessed packaging based on their environmental impact, so life cycle assessment, packaging efficiency, or indirect environmental impacts like the emptyability of the packaging, how much of the product is out before you dispose of the packaging, and another set of parameters is around the topic of circularity. So the consumer action, recyclability, recycled content, how much of renewable materials are used in this packaging. And based on this assessment, we compared packaging. And what you can see here on the right side, just an example from our results for both the dairy project, but also the cosmetic project. In the upper part, you see a juxtaposition of the recyclability and the carbon footprint. Those two, we believe, are the most important ones, or where we have the most focus, at least. And there you can see if a packaging, it doesn't mean if it's recyclable that the carbon footprint is good, or the other way around. Sometimes also what we can see here, we have the picture that, for example, here we look at butter packaging, the normal, let's say normal, the butter packaging, which is mostly used. So paper-based compounds are very low with the carbon footprint, which is a good thing, but recyclability, we do need more here. They're around 30%, which you can see at the yellow circle. So low carbon footprint, but recyclability is not even close to the percentage that the packaging waste regulation will demand. So there, when we need to think, okay, where can we go? We need to probably redesign this packaging to get a higher recyclability. And also what we have seen, just to give a few words on the second the diagram, that, for example, here you can see shampoo packaging, and we also assessed the secondary materials, so the recycled content, that most of the packaging do not have any recycled content in there. And here we talk about cosmetic packaging, where we do not have, let's say, the hurdle as with food contact packaging to only use PET as secondary material. So also there, we need to hurry up to be compliant with the new demands. And I just brought you some questions for you as a company to ask yourself: are you ready for this transition of the packaging and packaging waste regulations? So are you aware of the current legislation and what obligations you need to face? Then probably you already have some requirements from your customers to prove or also to improve recyclability and carbon footprint of your packaging and other sustainability parameters. Not going through all those questions. What we believe is now the time to do is really to assess the current status of your packaging using those key sustainability parameters. Then also review the maturity of your packaging. Is so much really needed for product protection? And in the end, I'll come to the thing I said in the beginning. It will be a journey, a continuous evaluation of all those sustainability parameters, really to be always on top and ready for the next years. And with that, I think I hand over back to Nerida and then Alexander.
Thank you very much. Certainly the methodology that you're talking about and the benchmarking is of great interest to, I'm sure, many of the people here tonight. And I think we need to probably put that into a future webinar to talk about particularly the holistic sustainability assessment, and also how we can ensure that there's consistency of these standards across all of the EU states wherever possible. So I'm going to hand over to Alexander next, because he is standing between all the questions and all the answers. So no pressure, Alexander, but we welcome you to your first webinar with the WPO, and we hope to see you back and many more in the future.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Quite the challenge that you posed to me there. But I think I'll be able to provide some interesting insights for you, because the company that I work for, Schwarz Group, is really in a unique position because it's affected by so many ways by the PPWR, right? We have PreZero, a large waste management and recycling company. We obviously have Lidl and Kaufland within the group, the largest retail companies in Europe. But we also have Schwarz Production, which, believe it or not, is one of the top 10 producers of beverages and food products in Germany. So essentially functioning as a brand owner. So we are affected in many different ways by the PPWR. And as such, there are a lot of topics that we could discuss when talking about it, like reuse quotas for transport packaging, how this affects logistics, marketing claims, how this will need to evolve until 2030, or DRS systems, how this will influence waste streams. But today I have about 10 minutes and we are short on time. So if you could go to the next slide. I know it works. I want to focus on two topics today, which at least to my mind are the most important ones. And this is material security and packaging data. I wrote for you here a study done by Conversio last year, who are working a lot for Plastics Europe in Europe. And they made a study to determine how much the recycled content in packaging and plastic packaging needs to increase in 2030 compared to what we have now. And they found that in the polyolefins, we need a 5-fold increase until 2030, and for PET, a 2-fold increase. So a massive demand spike will happen. This obviously comes with two big caveats, at least two big caveats. The first one being, this is far from an exact science right now, and you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. Conversio could not account last year for all the transformation in the packaging industry that was going to take place, the shift to more paper-based packaging, but also account for market growth, population growth, and so forth. So in the end, it might be a 4-fold increase, or it might be a 6-fold increase, but basic point still stands. It will be a massive spike in demand. The second thing, and more important thing, is that we also got to get away from just thinking about quantities, but also thinking about qualities. You got to think about it. Where are we using recycled content in plastic packaging right now? Sure, there are some high value applications, high quality applications like this PET bottle, right? But especially in the polyolefins, it is also the comparatively easier packagings where we already have recycled content, right? Obviously, we have some high value applications there as well. But what I'm trying to say is it's not like there is so much low-hanging fruit going around. So we will need increase in quantity, but also in quality, so in qualities that are harder and harder to reach. So we will really see an increase in demand of high-quality materials that are needed from recycling. And the capacity in Europe will certainly increase. There are a lot of projects going on, and we'll also see imports from other countries. But it is really crucial that these also meet the quality standards that you need on your lines to maintain efficiency, or in essence, that this material just works for your packaging. So this will be a very, very big challenge for brand owners and retailers along the value chain. So I also can only urge you to start analyzing your packaging, determine what quality you need for your packaging that just works for you, and get in contact with suppliers now and start thinking about secure material. At our EPR system in Germany, we also actively assist everyone that licensed in the packaging with us by offering something that we call circular insurance, where we actively work with the value chain with suppliers and converters and brand owners to make sure that their packaging will be PPWR proof in the future. But material security is a main issue. A second big issue that I want to talk about today is data management. Now, probably could be like, data management, well, that sounds kind of boring, doesn't it? But it's really not, and I will tell you why. Because think about all the requirements that you heard about from Lina, from Manfred. Ban on non-recyclable packaging, use of recyclates, reuse quotas, packaging minimization. Also think about additional costs like accumulation and plastic taxes, but also net zero targets. Because realize, please, that the PPWR is within the framework of the European Green Deal. So this also should serve to increasingly decarbonize the whole industry. And if you just look at the additional costs, I brought for you here the example of a bag of chips put on the market on Germany. In 2022, you had to deal for the end of life with the EPR fees, which are also constantly rising. Now you have to deal with the littering costs driven by the SUPD. And in the future, we'll have accumodulation, and this is not even accounting for the plastic tax that we also will have in Germany probably very soon. This will easily be a threefold increase in the end-of-life cost of the packaging. But the thing here is you have to keep track of all of those. You have to, if you're like Lidl and Kaufland putting packaging on the market in more than 30 countries with certain regulations, we really have to keep track of this. So what it means, PPWR is essentially much more data to manage. Another example is recyclability, which we also already heard a lot about today. At Lidl and Kaufland, we have up to 100,000 SKUs in 30 countries. And to determine the recyclability of a single SKU, of a single piece of packaging, can easily require 70 points of data. It's a rough average, can be more, can be less, depending how complex the packaging is, but about 70 points of data per packaging. If you multiply this, this is 7 million points of data Lidl and Kaufland need each year to determine if they are compliant with the recyclability requirements of PPWR. Now, will we solve this by sending Excel files around? No, certainly not, at least not in an efficient manner. So we really have to think about going digital and manage data in a digital way on a digital platform. So this is why PreZero teamed up with Packaging Cockpit to provide such a solution to the value chain that enables this. It has all the required key features that you need to measure, report, and optimize your packaging. It cannot do everything that Manfred said will be important in the future because we don't know the regulations for this yet, right? We don't know how to measure emptyability of packaging, but everything that we can do now, because what this tool, what this digital platform lets you do, it's analyze the packaging in 20 different countries. So there was a question in the chat before, is there a mapping of the different waste streams? There's even one better. You can enter the packaging data of your packaging here, and then it tells you how recyclable is it in 20 different countries in the EU. So is it recyclable in Poland? Is it recyclable in France, in Germany? What are the differences? It gives you these results. Also lets you determine the carbon footprint of your packaging via streamlined LCA and based on eco-invent data. And it also provides you an overview of packaging costs like EPR fees and plastic taxes and the countries that have them. So it gives you all the KPI. It's also quite easy to use. Obviously, it's still always a pain to get all your data in a system like this, but it's as easy as it can be because it has a modular structure that allows you to mix and match all the packaging components and then create it like a Lego set in a way. Allows you to do customized reports for your stakeholders that provides them with the relevant information that they need. And that is the most important thing. It also really helps to facilitate the exchange of data within the value chain. You can import data, export data, send queries right from the platform to your supplier, say, please give me this packaging data. I need to work with it to determine recyclability. You can all do that. And probably the best thing for you to hear today, it is a solution that PreZero and Packaging Cockpit offer you for free. So if you go to spot.prezero.com, you can apply there for your login data at spot.prezero.com. I'll also write it in the chat and send you the corresponding slide that somehow got lost here. To require access to this platform, request access to this platform to start analyzing your packaging, its recyclability, carbon footprint, and so on today. With that, I hand back to Nerida.
Thank you, Alexander. And I think we have a few gremlins in the background hiding behind those slides. My apologies. We might turn those slides off, Natalia, while we jump into some questions, because we have quite a lot in the chat. Now, we obviously are not going to be able to answer all of the questions now. And I'm going to just pick some randomly, and we will do our best to be able to answer them offline and provide them to all of the attendees Also, we will provide you with access to the recording. So anything that you missed tonight, we're happy to share that with you as well. Interesting, Alexander, you were talking about recycled content. One of the louder conversations at the moment is obviously accessibility and affordability of recycled content, but also verification and certification. And so I guess my question to you is how do you believe the PPWR is going to be able to have consistent harmonized standards for verification and certification for recycled content? Or you might not know that yet.
I at least know that the industry is actively working on it. For example, there's a Recyclability Recycled Content Task Force, which are working on audit schemes and really try to implement this chain of custody approach that works and is accepted throughout the whole industry. It gets challenging then if we can really enforce this. So if we can go to China, for example, and say, is this really the case, what you do there, what you claim that there is? So this can get tricky really fast. So we require the cooperation of other countries in the world, obviously, from the EU. But I'm cautiously optimistic that this will be achieved.
And that is a really fantastic point, because certainly when you're importing packaging and materials from other countries, you have to rely sometimes on their specifications and their data and what they're telling you. So we're certainly going to watch what happens with the certifications from EU side. And I'm not sure who would like to answer this, but this is a fantastic question from Caroline. Will recyclability be more important than carbon footprint? Who would like to answer that one?
Yes, then I'm going to answer it. Here, of course, recyclability here will be one of the key KPIs of the PPWR. If packaging is not fulfilling at least a 70% recyclability, then it will be banned from the market. So this is, of course, very important. Carbon footprint will be important as well, because on the one hand, here we calculate here the sustainability of recycling technologies here by means of the carbon footprint, and here the carbon footprint of packaging will be included in one way or other in the minimization methodology of the Commission, but this has not been published yet.
Yeah. Maybe to add to this from my perspective, or the perspective of a retailer like Lina Kelton or Schwarz Group. So recyclability is more important in the sense that it's a direct requirement for compliance, and as such is a non-negotiable. But in terms of the overall CSR strategy, decarbonization and CO2 footprint of packaging is also very important. So it's not an either or, it's a both.
So my next question is from Julia. Who is responsible for the packaging KPIs to be in place? The one who places the packed goods on the market, the retailer, or the packaging manufacturer? And that's an excellent question. And certainly in Australia's perspective, we've been talking about brands versus manufacturing suppliers at the moment. So who would like to answer that one?
So it depends on the requirements. The PPWR is also structured by obligations for producers and those who put the packaging on the market, and then there are requirements for the retailer. For example, the reuse quotas are mainly addressed to the retailers for alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, but then there are also cases which where the retailer essentially functions as a manufacturer, so to say. So it's complex, and you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But it's certainly so that everyone who introduces packaging to the market will have some sort of responsibility.
Thank you for that. So the next question is, how long is the minimum 70% recyclability valid before it jumps to 80%?
So 80% is valid from 2038 onwards, and depending on when the 70% is applicable, so either in 2030 or then 2 years after the delegated acts are being published, you have a period of like 6 to 8 years, probably between 70% and then 80%.
So the next question is interesting because it's certainly something that I was looking at the other day when with the certified compostable packaging regulation, because it's slightly different, obviously, from what we had expected. The question is it possible to place on market compostable plastic packaging other than indicated, like for the coffee, the tea, sachets?
Not really. So there will be like assessments by the European Commission if other packaging are also being like or can be compostable under this provision. But as for now, just items that are listed in the
So
PPWR.
any compostable packaging that's going in a food and organic program, they won't have that either?
Are you talking about like plastic?
Any certified
bags
compostable packaging that's currently on the market that might be capturing food waste, where does that sit?
Maybe I can add to this because, again, sorry, the answer is it depends, because compostability is a very good topic to illustrate a bigger point, because in Europe right now we have really mess of packaging regulation, right? Everything is different everywhere. And the PPWR always came with this promise. Now we get harmonization. And for a big part, we did get this, but in a few cases, especially for the reuse quotas and for compostability, there are the possibilities for the member states to do something different. And especially for compostability, we really expect this to be the case that countries like Italy, for example, make use of these exemptions and that they let you allow different compostable packaging to be introduced on the market. So again, here you have to look at a case-by-case basis.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if there's any. So if Ian has asked if the new EU Parliament is not bound by Act now, wait for the autumn. Oh, that's obviously to do with your elections, I would suspect.
Yes, there are elections in June, and then there will be a new Parliament. And yeah, in the past, the new Parliament always set the way forward as the old Parliament did, but as of like regulations and like how the Parliament works, they are not really bound to do so, but the past showed that they always did the same then as the last one.
So I'm just very mindful of time. One question that I have for Charlotte is, what do the results of the benchmarking mean with regard to the PPWR? And how can companies, like, do the companies need to act now?
Oh, yeah, definitely. As we said all the time in our webinar. Yes, what we have seen, as showed with, for example, the butter packaging, that there are, let's say, several angles we need to tackle this. One is from the side of recyclability, but also recycled content, that some packaging already fulfill the criteria, but most of them we have assessed do not. And for example, with recyclability, most of the packaging do not reach 70% of recyclability. And when we think, okay, already 8 years later, we already need 80%, there is a lot to do here on that sector, but I think this has been clear for most of the companies that really recyclability is the key measure for packaging now. Because as I said, when you do not reach this goal, your product cannot be anymore on the market, at least from what we know now. But I believe the tricky part is the timing, because we do not have the design for recycling criteria right now, on which will be the basis for assessing recyclability. But what I think also Manfred has said, those general criteria how to design for recycling will apply. And what we have seen by assessing packaging on this holistic approach will have at least have an understanding for now where I'm at with the sustainability of my packaging.
So I'd like to close off today, firstly by thanking all of you for your wonderful presentations. And just like part one, we have lots more questions that obviously everyone's going to ask you, and I'm sure, no doubt, we'll have a part three. The most important thing is that the WPO ensures that all of the attendees have access continually to updated information. It's really important that we can support the guidance and information and knowledge sharing of this, because it is quite overwhelming for most people, and certainly for the small and medium-sized businesses, it is very overwhelming. And if we had SMEs, a lot of SMEs here tonight, they would probably be very overwhelmed and be going and lying down in a room for probably 10 minutes after this. And so I think what's really important as a really critical takeaway is that's what the WPO packaging organisations around the world do. They are here to help you and support you and provide training and education and ensure that you can design your packaging more effectively. And before everybody runs away, I just wanted to very quickly just talk about some resources that we have available. Natalia, if you can put them on the slides, but if not, I can just talk to them. The WPO has worked with Circular Analytics and the University of Applied Science and also ECR Community to develop what's one of really important pieces of the puzzle to us is the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide. And whilst we know that this will change and it will have to be updated in effect to meet the PPWR regulations, it's a good starting point. And so we really do encourage everybody around the world to access the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide. It is based on state-of-the-art materials recovery facilities, and it will help guide you overall to be recycle ready. It is very aesthetically pleasing. It is very easy to use. It is not just about a material, it's actually about the full pack. And so it talks about the inks and the adhesives and the labels and the caps and everything, every single component, as well as the PET bottle, for example, or the glass bottle. It has a traffic light system, which is really important. Again, it guides you through that process, and it will help you to understand whether you are like the grading and the rating that Lina talked about at the start of the webinar. It will help you to understand where you sit and what areas of improvement you can do to your design to ensure that you are recycle ready. One of the other areas that's really important for us within the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide is that everybody around the world has access to it. And just like the EU are doing for their member states at the moment, this is something that the WPO are tasked with. And so far we have 14 translations available. All of these are free of charge. All of these can be downloaded by you, and you can share them with your own colleagues, your workforce, other people that you work with in the industry. And we really do encourage you to share these documents because it's really going to support this transition to be recycle ready. We also have currently 31 waste stream mapping tools, and this is the next step down. And the waste stream mapping tools are designed to really look at recyclability and the truth of recyclability in each country. And so if you're moving into a particular export market and you're really not sure what is and isn't recyclable in that country, these waste stream mapping tools will help guide you. Obviously, these are dynamic documents as well, and I'm sure they'll have a lot of evolution in the future. Another really important standout or highlight in recent times is the EU actually recognised the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide within their new methodology. And I would encourage you to have a look at this report. It's a very proud moment, I'm sure, for Manfred and his team, who've done a remarkable job in creating this guide. But it is really a proud moment, I think, for everybody that was a part of the project to see that the EU has recognised the guide for what it is. Other pieces of the puzzle, we try to provide surveys, position papers, we have case studies, and we also have our World Star Packaging Awards. And we try really hard to make sure that everything is accessible and free of charge to anyone around the world. And so we have case studies on sustainability. We have case studies on safe food packaging. And again, all you have to do is pop onto the website and download them. The WPO are here to help you. Our 63 member countries around the world are here to support you, to train you and educate you. And if you ever need anything, please reach out to either your local WPO member association or just directly to the head office of WPO. So thank you so much to Alexander for joining us, and we welcome you back next time. Lina, you're always a champion answering the questions in the chat. Charlotte and Manfred, thank you so much. And to Natalia, who hides in the background, we couldn't do it without you. And to all of the attendees, this is the start of a long conversation, and we really look forward to the next webinar, part 3. So stay tuned. Have a fabulous day if you're in Europe, and to all of the Aussies and New Zealanders, go to bed because I know it's past your bedtime. So thank you, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.